The planet Varnak was dying. From the dark skies, streams of red fire rained down, turning the great cities into oceans of flame. The ground shook with every explosion, and the air burned with the sound of falling ships. The proud Varnaki, once rulers of 5 suns, now watched their world crumble beneath the iron storm of the core empire. General Turek, leader of the Varnaki Defense Command, stood at the edge of a cracked balcony overlooking the capital. Below him, towers fell like candles melting in heat. The sky was thick with smoke, glowing orange where plasma blasts lit the clouds. His breathing was heavy. Even through the mask that protected him from the toxic air, he could taste the dust of his dying world. They had fought bravely. They had sent fleets, soldiers, drones, everything they had. But the core were merciless. They didn't come to conquer. They came to erase. Every communication satellite, every orbital defense gun, every spaceport, they were all gone within hours. The Varnaki people had no escape. Inside the underground command bunker, the remaining officers gathered around a flickering holo map. The display was covered in red zones, each one marking a fallen city. Only 3 still shone blue. "General," one of the younger soldiers said, his mandibles trembling, "the North Continent is gone. The core burned it. They're pushing toward the capital." Trek didn't answer at first. His eyes were on the map, but his mind was far away, remembering his children, his mate, his home in the green valleys of the south. Everything he loved had vanished in fire. Finally he spoke, his voice hollow. "Send the call." The room went silent. The officers looked at him in disbelief. Sending the call meant admitting defeat. It meant begging the galaxy for help. The Varnaki were a proud race. They had never asked for aid from anyone, but pride could not stop death. "Do it," Turek repeated. "Send it to all channels, all frequencies. Someone, somewhere, must hear us." The technician nodded and began typing. The message was short but desperate, a cry from a dying world. "To any allied or neutral species, we are under attack by the core empire. Our defenses are broken. Our people are dying. We plead for help, please. If anyone can hear us, help Varnak." The signal burst into the void of space, carried by invisible waves of energy. It passed through burning wreckage, across broken moons, and out into the cold black of the galaxy. Days passed. No one answered. The Varnaki kept fighting, but their lines fell one by one. Refugee ships tried to escape, but the core hunted them down, burning them like stars falling from the sky. The screams of their people filled the comm channels. In the bunker, Turek sat alone, staring at the static on the holomap. His soldiers had stopped coming. Most were dead. The power flickered as the capital burned above. He whispered softly, to no one, "Are we truly alone in this galaxy?" And then something happened. A faint signal blinked on one of the side screens, tiny, fragile, like a heartbeat. The technician gasped. "General, there's a reply." Turek turned sharply. "From who?" The technician's hands shook as he adjusted the signal. "Unknown origin. Unknown code. It's not core, not any known species, but they received our message. They're responding." Through the static, a strange voice echoed, low, calm, and unlike anything the Varnaki had ever heard. "We received your distress call. Stand by. Help is on the way." The translation software struggled with the alien language, but the message was clear enough. Turek felt something he had not felt in many days. Hope. But that hope was mixed with confusion. The voice sounded human, harsh, cold, and filled with something deep, something powerful, the kind of tone that belonged to a species that had seen too much war. "Identify them," Turek said quickly. "Who are they?" The technician frowned. "Signal origin, unknown. The data path is strange. It's from a system on the edge of the Perseus Arm, a small planet orbiting a yellow star." Turek looked at the star map. The location was distant, forgotten, an isolated world most of the galaxy ignored. "That place, what is its name?" The technician checked the registry. "Old catalog calls it Earth, the name meant nothing to them then, just another primitive world, far beyond the center of galactic power. Yet something in that single word made the room fall silent. Far away, across countless light years, humanity had heard the call, and in the darkness of their deep space stations, in the cold silence of their warships, the Death Worlders began to move. They did not come for power. They did not come for conquest. They came because someone had asked for help, and humanity never ignored a cry for help. In the burning ruins of Varnak, General Terek looked up at the blood-red sky. For the first time in days he whispered a prayer, not to his gods, but to whoever had answered their message. "Whoever you are," he said softly, "may your stars burn brighter than ours ever did." He didn't know it yet, but his prayer had been heard by the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Death Worlders were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Light years away from the burning skies of Varnak, the humans of Earth were far from peaceful. Their home planet had once been a green jewel, but centuries of hardship had shaped them into something else, something fierce. They were the Death Worlders, a species forged in storms, surviving on lands where nothing else could. They had grown strong in the shadow of hurricanes, in deserts that swallowed cities and oceans that devoured the weak. Humanity had learned to endure, to adapt, to fight. On the orbital station horizon, Commander Mara Holt watched the flickering signal. The alien plea for help repeated itself on the screen, distorted, broken, yet unmistakable. Her jaw tightened. The language was unfamiliar, the tones harsh and jagged, but the meaning was clear. Someone somewhere was dying. Her second officer, Lieutenant Kieran Voss, leaned over the console. "Commander, it's just a random call. It's probably not meant for us. We've received signals like this before. Lost worlds begging for help. Most of the time, nothing comes of it." Mara didn't reply immediately. She stared out of the viewport at the black void dotted with distant stars. "Maybe," she said finally, "but every life counts. And if we ignore it, we become nothing more than spectators of death." Her words hung in the cold air of the station. Around her, the crew shifted uncomfortably. They had been trained for many things: exploration, survival, combat, but this was different. Responding to a call meant leaving safety behind and stepping into the unknown. Humanity had not done that for centuries, yet Mara's mind was already made up. She had survived Earth's worst storms, the deserts that killed the unprepared and oceans that drowned the reckless. She knew instinctively what the galaxy did not yet understand. Humans were relentless. Once they committed, nothing could stop them. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered, her voice calm but firm. "We move out immediately. Full readiness. Weapons online. Shield levels at maximum. Every pilot on alert. We are going to save them." Kieran hesitated, shaking his head. "Commander, the distance, the unknown dangers." Mara's gaze cut through the hesitation like a blade. "We survive because we face danger. That is what we are. That is who we have always been." By the next hour, the Terran Expeditionary Fleet was moving through the void. Ships of all sizes, built for endurance and combat, slipped into silent formation. Each one carried crews who had been tested against the worst nature could throw at them. Every pilot knew that this mission could be their last. Yet they felt no fear, only the sharp edge of resolve. For humanity, help was not a choice. It was a responsibility. It was a principle born from a world where only the strong survived, where weakness could not endure, and where compassion was measured by action, not words. As the fleet accelerated, Mara studied the data they had intercepted. The alien race, the Varnaki, were being systematically destroyed by a powerful empire, the Core. Their defenses were failing. Cities were burning. Millions were dying. Humanity had no obligation to intervene. And yet, the signal was enough to ignite a storm within them. The crew whispered among themselves. "Are we ready for this?" one asked. Mara's eyes did not leave the screen. "We were born ready," she replied. We answer calls like this because that is the way of Deathworlders. We do not negotiate. We do not hesitate. We act. And act they did. As the Terran ships approached the coordinates sent by the Varnaki, sensors began picking up enemy activity. Vast fleets, weapons of unimaginable power. Mara did not flinch. The humans she commanded had faced death before. They had survived hurricanes that flattened cities, plagues that devoured populations, and battles where the odds were impossible. Nothing in the galaxy could teach them fear that they had not already learned to overcome. On the bridge, Mara clenched her hands over the console. Her mind was a storm of strategy and emotion. This was not just war. This was a test of who humanity had become. They were far from Earth, yet every heartbeat of every pilot resonated with the same truth. Life was sacred, and when someone cried for help, humanity would answer, even if it meant paying the ultimate price. The first signals from the Varnaki reached the fleet's communications array again. The alien voice, trembling, desperate, repeated their plea. Mara listened, letting the sound fill her ears. The words were alien, strange, almost incomprehensible, but the emotion was universal. Fear, pain, hope. Her eyes burned with determination. "Set course," she commanded. "Prepare for entry into hostile territory. Shields, weapons, everything. We are going to show them what humanity is capable of. And when we arrive, we will not just fight. We will survive. We will protect. We will ensure no one else suffers today." The crew nodded, their faces hard with resolve, but their eyes reflected the same truth Mara felt. They were more than humans. They were Deathworlders, the children of storms, survivors of impossible worlds, and warriors of the galaxy's forgotten edges. Somewhere across the stars, the core empire would soon learn a lesson they had never imagined. When the Deathworlders awaken, mercy dies and humanity answers cries for help. The black void of space above Varnak was filled with fire. Smoldering wrecks of alien ships drifted like broken stars, their hulls cracked and glowing with molten metal. The planet below was a tapestry of smoke, ash, and shattered cities. And somewhere in the middle of this chaos, the Varnaki survivors cowered in the ruins, unsure if any help could ever arrive. Then, on the horizon of space, faint shadows appeared. At first, the Varnaki thought it was more of the core, a final wave of destruction sent to erase what remained. But as the shapes drew closer, they realized something impossible. These ships were different, sleek, angular, dark as obsidian, bristling with strange weaponry, but they moved with purpose, precision, and control. In the heart of the largest Varnaki city, General Tarek watched through the last intact orbital scanner. His claws tightened around the console. What are they?" he whispered, voice trembling. The transmission from the strange fleet arrived seconds later. A calm, steady human voice filled the comm channels. "This is Commander Mara Holt of the Terran fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Stand by for assistance." The Varnaki froze. For the first time in hours, silence filled the ruins. This was not the voice of a conqueror. It was not a threat, it was compassion. "Commander?" Tarek asked, unsure if he should trust this unknown species. You will fight them?" Mara's voice came again, firm and unwavering. "We do not leave the helpless behind. Prepare yourselves. We will engage the enemy." For the Varnaki, it was almost too much to comprehend. The humans were not just another alien race, they were predators, yes, but predators of the right kind. Their ships glinted like blackened knives in space. Their movements were sharp, violent, and deliberate. And yet, they were fighting for life, not domination. When the core fleet returned to finish the planet, they were met with something they had not expected. Human vessels, small and fast, tore through the enemy lines. Plasma cannons fired in patterns so precise that entire wings of core fighters were shredded in seconds. Terran missiles erupted like falling stars, striking warships before they could react. The humans did not hesitate, did not falter, and did not retreat. From the ground, Tarek watched his world's saviors as though seeing gods descend from the void. Each strike was brutal. Each maneuver was lethal. Entire fleets of the Corps were decimated before the Varnaki could even comprehend the scale. A child, hiding under the rubble of a fallen tower, looked up at the human ships. Her eyes were wide, full of fear, but also awe. She whispered to no one in particular, They are like the legends my grandfather told, the unstoppable ones. In the midst of the chaos, human soldiers were landing on the surface. Dropships pierced the smoke-filled skies, carrying elite units who moved with terrifying precision. They rescued the wounded, carried the dying to safety, and eliminated Corps patrols with cold efficiency. Every action was measured, every life saved was a promise kept. Trek finally approached the human commander's voice directly. Why do you fight for us? We are strangers. You do not know us, Mara paused. Her voice softened, almost like a whisper carried across the stars. Because we remember what it is to be alone. We remember helplessness, fear, and loss. No one should suffer while we can stop it. The general could not find words. Tears filled his eyes. Not for himself, but for the kindness of these dangerous beings. His claws shook as he whispered, then, thank you. The Corps, however, were relentless. Their remaining forces gathered to strike back, but the humans were already one step ahead. They had studied the enemy's tactics, anticipated every movement, and adapted in seconds. The Corps ships fell one after another, their pride and arrogance shattered by humans who knew pain, survival, and the edge of death. And yet, even in victory, humanity did not gloat. They moved through the ruins, checking survivors, tending the injured, and offering water, warmth, and hope. Where the Varnaki had lost everything, the humans offered something priceless, the certainty that life still mattered. From his command post, Trek looked at Mars' fleet as it moved with unstoppable momentum. He could not fully understand them. He might never understand them. But he knew one truth. The humans were not just warriors. They were legends of survival incarnate. And if the Corps believed they could crush this world, they had never faced Deathworlders before. Somewhere deep in space, humanity's voice carried over the comms once more. Calm, unwavering, and full of silent fury. Your call has been answered. We are here. No one dies while we are watching. And for the first time in weeks, the people of Varnak believed they might live. The galaxy had witnessed the arrival of something new. Something terrifying to their enemies and something extraordinary to the helpless. Humanity had arrived not for glory, not for conquest, but for the purest act of defiance, protecting those who could not protect themselves. And that was only the beginning. The smoke of Varnak hung heavy in the air. Swirling around shattered towers and streets turned to rivers of ash. The planet's surface looked like a canvas of pain, painted by the fires of war. And yet, amid the chaos, there was movement, a calm, deliberate, and unstoppable force. The humans were everywhere, moving like shadows through the rubble, carrying hope with every step. Dropships touched down carefully, their engines humming softly over the cries of the wounded. Human soldiers leapt out, weapons ready, eyes scanning for danger. But unlike the Corps, these soldiers did not move to kill for conquest. Every step, every breath, every action was measured to save life, even when surrounded by destruction. In one ruined square, a human medic knelt beside a Varnaki child trapped beneath a fallen beam. The girl's mandibles quivered with fear, tears streaking her face, dust coating her scales. The medic ignored the fires around them, his hands steady and gentle as he lifted the beam. "You're safe now," he said softly. Though the child could not understand his words, his tone carried meaning enough. Safety, care, hope. General Turek watched from a nearby command post, clawed hands gripping the edge. He had seen warriors before, but never like this. The humans fought as fiercely as predators, but moved with compassion rare in any species. They rescued civilians even while Corps fighters still lurked nearby. They built barriers to protect the weak, guided survivors through broken streets, and offered food and water without hesitation. They fight for more than victory, Turek whispered to himself. They fight for life itself. The Varnaki could barely comprehend the humans' methods. Where they had trained for centuries to kill or flee, humanity trained for both survival and protection, as if danger was a constant companion. And it was. Each human soldier carried scars of battles no one else could imagine, yet none of that slowed them down. Instead, it sharpened their resolve. On the horizon, core patrols continued to skirmish, but the humans moved like a tide of steel and fire. Every shot that found a core ship was precise, deliberate, almost surgical. Every civilian lifted from rubble, every child guided from the burning streets, was proof that humans could be both destruction and mercy at the same time. Trek felt a surge of emotion he had not experienced in years. The humans were dangerous beyond measure. They could annihilate entire fleets without hesitation, but their mercy was greater still. It was the kind of power that made worlds tremble, not because it ruled them, but because it could save them. One young Varnaki soldier approached the general. "Sir, they are different. They are unstoppable." Turek nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on a human pilot helping civilians into a shuttle. "Yes," he said quietly, "but it is not just their weapons. It is their will. They will not stop for fear. They will not hesitate for doubt. They care, and care they did." In the wreckage of a collapsed district, human engineers worked tirelessly, using whatever materials they could salvage to erect shelters, shields, and safe corridors. They cleared debris to create pathways, guided survivors to extraction points, and even defended the weak with nothing but courage and the edge of their blades when weapons were unavailable. A Varnaki mother approached Turek, holding her youngest child tightly. She had lost everything else. Her voice trembled. Who are they? How can they care so much for us?" Turek could only shake his head. "I do not know, but they are what we hope for, what we cannot become alone. They are humanity." As night fell, fires still burned across the horizon, casting flickering shadows across the city. The humans did not rest. Their soldiers rotated shifts without complaint. Their medics worked tirelessly, and their pilots patrolled the skies. They were relentless in their protection, even as exhaustion threatened to overtake them. And somewhere in the calm after each firefight, when a child finally smiled after being rescued or a family embraced after surviving, the humans allowed themselves a quiet satisfaction, not for glory, not for recognition, but for having saved life when all seemed lost. Trek observed them and felt hope bloom where there had been despair. The Corps had expected death and submission. Instead, they found life thriving in the most dangerous way possible, because the humans did not just fight. They protected, and that protection was more terrifying to the Corps than any weapon. Commander Mara Holt watched from her flagship as humans continued their work. She knew the battle was far from over. The Corps would return in greater numbers, but at that moment, seeing the lives they had saved, she allowed herself a rare smile. Humanity had come for strangers, and for the first time, she felt the true weight and honor of what they were capable of. Across the shattered cities of Varnak, fires still burned. But amidst the ashes, hope had been planted. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy would remember why humans were not to be underestimated, not for conquest, but for the power of their mercy. Because where there is life to protect and cries for help in the darkness, humanity answers. Always. And the Corps would learn this soon enough. The victory of humanity and the Varnaki had been hard won, but it was fleeting. Across the void, the Corps Empire seethed with rage. Their pride had been shattered by a fleet they had underestimated, humans. A species they believed primitive, weak and unworthy of notice had arrived and torn apart their forces with precision. Speed and unrelenting fury, Admiral Korath, commander of the invading armada, slammed his clawed fist against the console of his flagship. The screens displayed the decimated remains of his fleet, still burning in orbit around Varnak. How can this be?" he hissed. His mandibles clicked in frustration. They are mortals. Nothing but mortals. And yet they strike like gods. His officers trembled. Even in core society, fear was rare, yet the humans had instilled it. Every tactic Korath had devised had been anticipated, every maneuver neutralized. Entire squadrons were destroyed before they could even engage. The humans did not fight like the core. They annihilated. The core fleet regrouped far from the planet. A dozen new super battleships had been called from the outer sectors, each armed with weapons capable of flattening continents. The core intended to finish what they had started. Varnak would burn, and this strange, defiant species would be crushed before they could interfere again. But the humans were ready. Commander Mara Holt watched the approaching storm from the bridge of her flagship. Her fingers hovered over the controls, calm but tense. "Sensors show the core armada," she said. "They have more ships than before. They intend to destroy everything." Lieutenant Kieran Voss swallowed hard. "Commander, the numbers. Even with our fleet—" Mara turned to him, her eyes sharp. "Even with our fleet, they will not break us. You think we have survived death worlds for centuries without learning how to overcome impossible odds? They do not know who they face." The human ships moved like a living organism, formations shifting with perfect timing. Pilots gripped their controls with practiced precision. Soldiers on dropships ready to strike at any exposed target. They had learned from Earth's deadliest storms. From deserts that killed the unprepared, from oceans that swallowed the careless. Every human in this fleet carried that experience into battle. When the core armada entered Varnak's orbit, they were met with a wall of fire. The human fleet did not wait. Every ship launched volleys of plasma, missiles, and kinetic rounds. Fighters tore through the enemy lines, ramming ships where weapons could not reach, creating a storm of chaos that the core had never faced. From the command post below, General Tirek watched in awe and disbelief. He had expected humans to fight, but not like this. Not with such precision and brutality. Ships collided, exploding in bursts of fire and metal. Yet the human formation held. Pilots shouted in comms. Soldiers moved with flawless timing. And through it all, the humans protected the Varnaki cities and survivors. Admiral Korath's fury turned to desperation. His attacks became reckless, his ships overextended, falling into traps set by the humans. Mara's fleet adapted with frightening speed, exploiting every weakness. Every core vessel that thought it could retreat was cut off. Every attack on civilians was met with lethal force. Humanity did not just fight. They eradicated the threat. Even in the chaos, humans showed mercy where they could. Civilians were evacuated, wounded carried to safety, and fires contained wherever possible. But when mercy was impossible, annihilation followed. Korath realized the truth too late. These humans did not hesitate. They did not negotiate. They did not forgive. From the observation deck of a human destroyer, a young pilot grinned as his squadron tore through a core battleship. "They said we couldn't reach them," he said, voice tight with adrenaline. "They said we couldn't survive their fleets. Look at them now." "They underestimated us," Mara's voice came over the comms, calm, unwavering. "Remember this. We fight for life, but if they threaten the innocent, we destroy them. This is the way of Deathworlders. This is who we are." The core fleet faltered under the relentless assault. One by one, their super battleships exploded in brilliant bursts of fire and metal. The remaining ships began retreating, fear replacing fury. Humanity's fleet did not give chase, they did not need to. The lesson had been taught. Below, Tarek felt tears prick his eyes. His people had survived. His world had a chance. But more than that, he understood the humans in a way he never thought possible. They were monsters of war, but monsters for the right reasons. They were merciless to the cruel, but merciful to the weak. They were legends walking among the stars, and the galaxy would remember this day forever. Mara looked out at the remains of the core fleet, her face calm but resolute. "We have won this battle," she said. "But the war is far from over. We protect the helpless, and anyone who threatens them will learn the price of underestimating Deathworlders. For the Varnaki, the humans were saviors. For the Corps, they were a nightmare they would never forget. And as the human fleet regrouped, moving to reinforce the battered cities and protect survivors, the galaxy began to whisper a new truth. When the Deathworlders awaken, no evil can survive their wrath. The fires of battle had finally dimmed. The once gray skies of Varnak were now streaked with smoke, ash drifting slowly across the horizon like the remnants of shattered hope. The Core Empire had retreated, their remaining ships fleeing into the void, but the victory was hollow. The streets were silent except for the cries of the wounded and the faint rumble of fires still burning in abandoned districts. Commander Mara Holt stood on the observation deck of her flagship, staring at the ruined cities below. She did not speak. Her jaw was tight, her eyes heavy. The fleet had won, but at what cost? Every ship carried scars. Every deck held the echo of lost voices. Thousands of humans had died to save a species they barely knew, and every loss weighed heavily on her heart. Lieutenant Kieran Voss approached, his face pale under the station lights. "Commander, the casualties, they are worse than we expected." Mara turned, her voice steady but quiet. "I know," she said. "Every life lost is a failure in some way, but we fought to protect them. That is all we could do." The truth was harsher. Human pilots who had charged fearlessly into core fire would never return home. Medics who had saved hundreds had fallen to stray blasts. Entire squads had been wiped out while holding streets so that civilians could escape. Yet for every human lost, countless Varnaki lives had been saved. On the surface, General Turek moved through the ruins with heavy claws. He had walked among the dead and dying, among survivors clinging to what little remained. His people looked at him with eyes full of gratitude and sorrow, unsure how to repay the humans who had come like storms and left protection in their wake. He approached one of the wounded human medics, kneeling beside a Varnaki mother and her child. The medic's uniform was torn, face streaked with soot and blood, but he smiled faintly at Turek. "We did what we had to," he said. "They'll live. That's enough." Turek's voice trembled as he whispered, "Your people, you gave everything." The medic shook his head, weary but resolute. "We don't fight for glory. We fight for life. That is all we've ever known." Elsewhere in the ruins of a collapsed city square, Varnaki children clutched at human soldiers, their faces marked by soot, fear, and exhaustion. The soldiers crouched, speaking in strange words, comforting gestures guiding them to safety. No human complained, no one faltered. Even after days of relentless combat, they continued to move with precision, compassion, and fierce determination. Mara walked among the survivors, pausing at each injured Varnaki. She listened to their thanks, shook their claws or hands, and offered what comfort she could. Each smile, each small sign of hope was a reminder of why she and her crew had risked everything. But every time she looked to the horizon, she felt the weight of the dead. In the orbital command center, reports came in from all units. Every human ship had sustained damage. Many were barely spaceworthy. Communication logs were filled with messages from pilots who had seen their friends die. The emotional toll was heavy, almost unbearable. Yet there was no despair among them, only a quiet resolve. They had done what was necessary, and in their silence there was honor. General Turek finally found himself standing beside Commander Holt, both overlooking the city from the safety of the command tower. "You've saved my world," he said quietly, "but I can see the cost in your eyes. How do you bear it?" Mara's gaze was distant, almost haunted. "We carry it because we must," she replied. "Every life lost reminds us of why we fight. If we forget the cost, we lose what we're protecting. And humanity never forgets." The general bowed his head, understanding for the first time the depth of the human spirit. These were not mere warriors. They were Deathworlders, born of hardship and tempered by the worst the universe could throw at them. They fought for others, yes, but they bore every scar and every loss as if it were their own. As night fell over the battered cities of Varnak, human soldiers continued to patrol, guide survivors, and extinguish fires wherever possible. The battle was over. But the war against fear and despair continued. Every act of mercy was a statement, every saved life a promise. Humanity would protect the helpless no matter the cost. Trek watched the humans quietly, feeling a mix of awe and gratitude. "They are not gods," he whispered, "but they might as well be. Their strength, it comes from their heart." Mara Holt stood silently, thinking of the lives lost, thinking of Earth, thinking of the battles yet to come. She knew the cost of victory, and she knew it would never leave her. Yet even in the weight of grief there was pride. Humanity had faced an empire and protected the weak. They had given everything and survived. And somewhere in the quiet corners of Varnak, the survivors whispered the same thought. The humans were dangerous beyond measure, unstoppable and merciful only to those who deserved it. The Deathworlders had come. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity answered a cry for help. The smoke of battle had finally cleared. The red skies of Varnak were fading into pale orange as dawn stretched across the shattered cities. Fire still burned in some districts, but their glow was small compared to the rising hope. The Varnaki were alive, trembling but alive, and the humans stood among them, tall and silent, their faces marked by exhaustion, soot, and the weight of the countless lives they had saved. Commander Mara Holt moved through the streets, her boots crunching over broken stone and scorched metal. Every step brought new reminders of the price they had paid. Fallen comrades, shattered buildings, and the haunted eyes of survivors. Each one carried the same question. Why had these humans come so far, risking everything for a species they barely knew? Mara did not answer immediately. She had seen the truth in the battle, in the way her crew moved, in the way humanity had fought. She knelt beside a Varnaki child, offering water from a flask, and smiled gently, though fatigue tugged at her shoulders. "Because we remember," she whispered softly. "We remember what it is to be helpless. We remember what it is to feel abandoned. And we act. That is who we are." Across the ruined cities, human engineers worked tirelessly to restore order. Temporary shelters rose from rubble, defensive barriers were erected to protect civilians, and medics carried out the last of their rounds, tending to those too weak to move. Humanity's presence was overwhelming, not just in power but in compassion. Every action was deliberate, every life preserved, every threat eradicated. General Turek watched silently, claws folded, from the steps of a destroyed tower. His people had survived, yes, but more importantly they had seen the true face of power wielded with conscience. Humans had come like storms, destroyed the enemy, and yet left behind hope, not tyranny. Turek bowed his head, filled with awe. "They are beyond anything we imagined," he murmured. "Not gods, but something even greater." Mara stepped onto her flagship's observation deck as the Varnaki celebrated their survival below. The fleet was battered, some ships barely spaceworthy, but every human aboard carried a quiet pride. They had given everything, lives, strength, and courage, and the galaxy had witnessed it. Yet for all the triumph, they knew their duty was not over. There were still worlds under threat, still cries for help echoing through the stars. The communication arrays crackled to life. Mara's voice, calm but commanding, spread across the void. "To the galaxy we speak. Humanity has heard the cries of the helpless. We are not conquerors. We are not gods. We are people, born from storms, shaped by struggle and tempered by survival. If you need help, call us. But if you bring war to the innocent, remember this day. Remember what happens when Deathworlders answer." The message rippled across countless worlds, transmitted to every system, every fleet, every listening species. Some would tremble in fear, others in hope. Humanity's legend was being written in real time, across light years, etched into the minds of allies and enemies alike. Below, Turek approached Mara on the observation deck. "Your message, it will be heard," he said quietly. "Your people, they are merciful yet unstoppable, You fight not for power, but for life itself. I cannot thank you enough. Mara shook her head. We do not fight for thanks. We fight because it is the only way to live without regret. Life is fragile. The galaxy is dangerous, and we will not stand by while others suffer if we can stop it. For the Varnaki, this day would be remembered forever. Children would grow up hearing the story of the humans who came from a distant world, arriving like shadows of destiny, fierce and terrifying, yet merciful beyond measure. Entire generations would learn that power is not measured by conquest but by the courage to protect others. Far above, the remnants of the core empire fled into space, battered and broken. The message of humanity spread faster than their retreat, carried by the whispers of survivors and the reports of fleeing vessels. A species had awakened, one that would not hesitate, one that would answer calls for help with unflinching force. Mara looked down at the recovering Varnaki below. Her heart ached for the lives lost for her fallen crew, and for the cost of every victory. Yet in the ashes she saw hope bloom. The galaxy had seen the face of humanity, not weak, not timid, not limited, but a force of relentless will tempered by compassion. Somewhere, in the vast darkness of the stars, the galaxy began to whisper a new name for humanity. A name that would carry through history, through fear, through awe. The annihilators of tyranny, the protectors of the weak. Because when the aliens called for reinforcements, the Deathworlders answered. And nothing, no empire, no force of cruelty would ever underestimate them again. The stars above Varnak twinkled softly, as if acknowledging the arrival of a new legend. A species born from storms had awakened. A galaxy of horrors had been warned. And humanity, for all its flaws and scars, had shown what it truly meant to survive and to protect. Commander Mara Holt took a deep breath and whispered, not to her crew, not to Tarek, but to herself, we are the Deathworlders, and we will answer every call for life, always. The fleet remained in orbit, silent and watchful, as Varnak's people began to rebuild. Somewhere in the distance, the echo of humanity's warning drifted through the stars. A simple truth, yet terrifying in its clarity. Mercy may guide them, but wrath follows swiftly. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget.